The email notification chimed at exactly 9:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning that would change everything. I was sitting in my corner office on the 30th floor of the Meridian Tower, reviewing quarterly reports when my assistant knocked. "Ms. Chen, the final candidate list for the marketing director position just came in," she said, sliding a folder across my mahogany desk. I opened it casually, expecting another routine hiring decision, but there it was, staring back at me from the top of the pile. A resume with the name Jessica Walsh, printed in neat professional font. Jessica Walsh. The woman who had stolen my fiancé 8 years ago. The woman who had destroyed my faith in love, trust, and the future I'd carefully planned. The woman who was now unknowingly applying to work for the company I'd built from the ground up, begging for a job that would put her directly under my authority. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. I leaned back in my leather chair and smiled. Sometimes the universe has a sense of humor. Sometimes it delivers justice wrapped in the most unexpected packages. And sometimes, just sometimes, it gives you the chance to show someone exactly what they lost when they chose to betray you. 8 years ago, I was Victoria Chen, 26 years old, and I thought I had everything figured out. I was living in the suburbs of Portland, Oregon, in a cozy 2-bedroom apartment that I shared with my fiancé, Michael Rodriguez. We'd been together for 4 years, engaged for 6 months, and our wedding was scheduled for the following spring. I had a decent job as a junior marketing coordinator at a small advertising firm, and Michael worked as a software engineer at a tech startup downtown. On paper, we were the perfect couple. We had the same taste in movies, the same weekend routines, and the same circle of friends. We'd even adopted a golden retriever named Charlie who served as our practice baby while we saved money for our future home. I was the type of person who color-coded my calendar, planned birthday parties 3 months in advance, and already had a Pinterest board dedicated to our wedding decorations. Michael seemed to love this about me. "You're so organized, Vic," he'd say, watching me arrange our bills by due date or meal prep our lunches for the week. "I don't know how you keep track of everything." I thought it was a compliment. I thought my attention to detail and planning skills made me a good partner, a good future wife. What I didn't realize was that while I was busy planning our future, Michael was already planning his exit. The first sign should have been the phone calls. Michael had always been social, but suddenly his phone was buzzing constantly with text messages and calls that he'd step outside to answer. When I asked about it, he'd shrug and say it was work stuff, or his buddy Jake having relationship problems, or his mom needing advice about something. I believed him because I had no reason not to. We'd never had trust issues before. We'd built our relationship on honesty and communication, or so I thought. The second sign was the schedule changes. Michael had always been a creature of habit. He worked 9 to 5, came home by 6 p.m., and we'd have dinner together while watching Netflix. But suddenly, he was working late, going to happy hours with colleagues I'd never heard of, and spending entire Saturdays at team-building events that seemed to happen every other weekend. "The startup life is crazy," he explained when I mentioned that we barely saw each other anymore. "You know how it is in tech. When you're trying to scale, everyone has to put in extra hours. It's temporary." I believed him because I wanted to believe him. I was busy with my own career, trying to prove myself at the advertising firm and hoping for a promotion to senior coordinator. I told myself that this was just a phase, that once his company stabilized and my career advanced, we'd go back to our comfortable routines. The third sign was the change in intimacy. We'd always been affectionate, the type of couple who held hands while watching movies and kissed goodbye every morning. But gradually, Michael became distant. He'd come to bed after I was already asleep, claiming he was too wired from work to sleep early. He'd leave for work before I woke up, saying he wanted to beat traffic. Our conversations became logistics-focused. who was picking up groceries when the cable bill was due, whether Charlie needed to go to the vet. When I tried to address it, Michael would get defensive. "I'm working my ass off for our future, Vic. I'm trying to build something here so we can have the life we want. Can't you be supportive instead of needy?" Needy. The word stung because it was so unlike how I saw myself. I prided myself on being independent, capable, low maintenance. But apparently, wanting to spend time with my fiancé and maintain emotional intimacy made me needy. I started walking on eggshells, careful not to ask too many questions or make too many demands on his time. I convinced myself that this was what mature relationships looked like. Sometimes you had to sacrifice immediate happiness for long-term goals. Sometimes love meant giving your partner space to grow and succeed. The fourth sign was the lies, small ones at first, barely noticeable. Michael would say he was at the office when his location showed he was across town. He'd claim he was having lunch with his coworker Dave, then Dave would mention not seeing Michael in weeks. He'd tell me he was too tired to go to my work holiday party, then post Instagram stories from a bar downtown the same night. When I confronted him about these inconsistencies, he'd have explanations. His phone's GPS was glitchy. Dave was confused about the timeline. He'd felt better after getting some fresh air and decided to meet up with friends spontaneously. Each explanation was plausible enough that questioning it further would make me seem paranoid, and I didn't want to be the paranoid girlfriend. I didn't want to be the woman who checked her partner's phone or demanded to know his whereabouts every minute. I'd seen relationships destroyed by jealousy and suspicion, and I was determined not to let that happen to us. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. I could feel it in the way he looked at me, or rather, the way he didn't look at me. I could hear it in the distracted tone of his voice when I talked about wedding planning. I could sense it in the careful way he phrased his sentences, as if he was constantly editing himself. The fifth sign was Jessica Walsh. Michael had mentioned her a few times in passing. She was a new hire at his company, a marketing specialist, who'd moved to Portland from San Francisco. She was helping them rebrand their product line, and Michael spoke about her work with unusual enthusiasm. "Jessica has this amazing perspective on user experience," he'd say. "She really understands how to connect with customers on an emotional level. I thought it was nice that he was excited about a colleague's work. I thought it showed he was engaged with his job and appreciated good talent. I even suggested he invite her to our housewarming party when we moved into our new apartment, because I wanted to meet the person who had reinvigorated Michael's passion for his work." "Oh, Jessica's pretty busy," Michael said quickly. "She's still settling into the city, probably wouldn't know anyone at the party. I offered to introduce her to some of my friends who worked in marketing, thinking she might appreciate the networking opportunity." Michael deflected again, saying she was more of a keep-to-herself type who didn't really do social events. It should have been a red flag that Michael was so protective of someone he claimed was just a colleague. But I was deep in wedding planning mode, spending my evenings researching florists and tasting caterers. I was focused on creating the perfect day to celebrate our love, not on deciphering the subtle signs that our love was already dying. The truth came out on a Thursday evening in October, 3 weeks before our wedding invitations were supposed to go out. I'd left work early to surprise Michael with his favorite Thai takeout, thinking we could have a quiet dinner together and finalize our guest list. I used my key to let myself into his apartment, calling out his name as I set the food on the kitchen counter. No response. His car was in the parking lot, so I knew he was home. I walked toward the bedroom, thinking he might be taking a nap or on a work call. The door was slightly ajar and I could hear voices inside. I was about to knock when I heard something that made my blood freeze. "I can't keep doing this, Michael. It's not fair to her." A woman's voice. Soft, concerned, intimate in a way that made my stomach drop. "I know," Michael replied, his voice heavy with emotion I hadn't heard in months. "I know it's not fair. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. But I can't hurt her like that. She's planned everything, Jess. The wedding, the future, everything, Jess. Jessica Walsh. The colleague who was too busy to come to parties and too shy to meet new people. I pressed myself against the wall, my heart pounding so hard I was sure they could hear it. The Thai food sat forgotten in the kitchen as I listened to my fiancé and his coworker discuss me like I was an obstacle to overcome rather than a person they were betraying. But you're hurting her anyway, Jessica continued. She knows something's wrong. I can see it in the way she looks at you when she picks you up from work. She's not stupid, Michael. I love her, Michael said, but his voice lacked conviction. I do love her. We've been together for 4 years. We have history, plans, a whole life together. But you're not in love with her anymore. The silence that followed felt like an eternity. I held my breath, waiting for Michael to deny it, to defend our relationship, to prove that everything I'd been feeling was just paranoia and insecurity. Instead, I heard him sigh. No, I'm not. Those 4 words shattered everything I thought I knew about my life. I'm not. Simple, direct, devastating. 4 years of shared experiences, future plans, and careful trust destroyed by 4 words spoken to another woman in the bedroom we'd shared for 2 years. I'm in love with you, Michael continued, his voice stronger now. I have been for months. I just didn't know how to tell Victoria. I kept thinking maybe it was just a phase, that I'd remember why I fell for her in the first place. And now? Now I know I'm not going to marry her. I can't. It wouldn't be fair to either of us. I heard movement in the room, footsteps, the sound of someone sitting on the bed. Our bed. So, what do we do? Jessica asked. I don't know. I guess I have to tell her. Cancel the wedding. Figure out how to untangle our lives. It's going to destroy her. It's going to destroy her more if you wait. Or if she finds out another way. Another way. Like overhearing a conversation between her fiancé and his lover while delivering surprise takeout. I almost laughed at the irony, but I was afraid the sound would give me away. I stood in that hallway for another 10 minutes, listening to them plan the end of my life. They discussed timing. After the holidays, they thought, to avoid ruining Christmas. They discussed logistics. Michael would find his own apartment. I could keep our current place since I'd paid most of the deposit. They discussed me, how I'd take it, who I'd lean on for support, whether I'd be able to forgive them. Eventually, they talked about me like I was a problem to be managed rather than a person whose heart they were breaking. They showed more consideration for my feelings in their planning than Michael had shown in months of actual interaction with me. When I finally heard them moving toward the bedroom door, I quietly slipped out of the apartment. I sat in my car, in the parking lot for 20 minutes, staring at the Thai food growing cold in the passenger seat, trying to process what I'd just heard. My fiancé was having an affair. He was in love with someone else. He was planning to leave me but hadn't found the courage to do it yet. Everything I'd attributed to work stress and relationship growing pains was actually him falling out of love with me and into love with her. Drove home in a daze, my mind cycling through every interaction, every excuse, every deflection from the past 6 months. All of it made sense now. The phone calls were Jessica. The late nights were Jessica. The distance, the lies, the careful editing of his words, all of it was about protecting his relationship with Jessica while keeping me in the dark about the end of ours. That night, I did something I'd never done before. I called in sick to work and spent the entire day in bed, not crying, not raging, just empty. I felt like someone had reached into my chest and removed something vital, leaving me hollow and struggling to breathe. Charlie seemed to sense something was wrong. He stayed pressed against my side all day, his warm weight the only thing that felt real and solid in my suddenly uncertain world. Michael came home that evening with flowers and apologies. "I'm sorry I had to work late again," he said, kissing my forehead. "I know we need to spend more time together. Maybe this weekend we can go to that new restaurant you wanted to try." I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw a stranger. This man who had shared my bed for 2 years, who knew my coffee order and my favorite movies, who had proposed to me on the beach where we'd had our first date, was a complete stranger. He was looking at me with pity, not love. He was making plans he had no intention of keeping. He was lying to my face while fresh from another woman's arms. "That sounds nice," I said, because I didn't know what else to say, because I wasn't ready to confront the truth yet, because I needed time to figure out how to rebuild my life from the ground up. But that night, as Michael slept beside me, I made a decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to wait for him to find the courage to leave me. I wasn't going to let him and Jessica plan my heartbreak like it was a business merger. I was going to take control of my own story, even if I had no idea what that story would become. I just never imagined that 8 years later, I'd be in a position to write the ending myself. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in months. While Michael showered and got ready for work, humming off-key like he always did when he was in a good mood, I sat at our kitchen table with my laptop and did something I'd never done before. I started planning my exit strategy, not just from the relationship, but from the entire life I'd built in Portland. If Michael thought he could manage the timeline of my heartbreak, he was about to learn that Victoria Chen wasn't the passive, accommodating woman he'd grown comfortable deceiving. Opened a new document and titled it Project Liberation. It felt dramatic, maybe even silly, but I needed something to focus on besides the crushing weight of betrayal that threatened to paralyze me. I divided my plan into 5 categories: financial independence, career advancement, personal growth, social network, and the confrontation. Under financial independence, I listed everything Michael and I shared: the apartment lease, joint bank account, shared credit card, and the wedding expenses we'd already paid. I realized with growing satisfaction that most of our major assets were actually mine. The apartment was in my name because I'd had better credit when we moved in. The furniture was mostly mine from before we lived together. Even Charlie was registered under my name at the vet clinic. Michael had been living quite comfortably in a life I'd largely financed, and he didn't even realize it. Under career advancement, I started researching opportunities outside Portland. If I was going to rebuild my life, I wanted to do it somewhere fresh, somewhere without memories on every corner. I'd always been interested in tech marketing, but my current firm focused mainly on local restaurants and retail shops. I needed to level up, and fast. I spent my lunch break that day applying to marketing positions in Seattle, San Francisco, and Austin. Not just any positions, but roles at innovative companies that would challenge me and accelerate my career growth. I was done playing it safe, done settling for comfortable mediocrity. For personal growth, I made a list of everything I'd wanted to do but had put on hold because of wedding planning or because Michael wasn't interested. Learning Spanish, taking a photography class, traveling solo, joining a hiking group. I'd spent so much energy trying to be the perfect partner that I'd forgotten what it felt like to pursue my own interests. The social network section was more complex. Our friend group was deeply intertwined, and I knew that when the truth came out, I'd have to navigate carefully. Some friends would choose sides, others would try to remain neutral, and some would disappear entirely because our couple friendships would become too awkward to maintain. But the confrontation was the section I kept returning to throughout the day. How do you confront someone who's been lying to you for months? How do you tell your fiancé that you know about his affair without revealing that you'd eavesdropped on his most private conversation? The answer came to me during my evening commute. I wouldn't confront him about Jessica at all, not yet. Instead, I'd give him exactly what he claimed to want, an opportunity to be honest with me about his feelings. That evening, I cooked Michael's favorite dinner and opened a bottle of wine. He seemed surprised by the effort, especially since I'd been distant and distracted for weeks. "This is nice," he said, settling into his chair across from me. "What's the occasion?" "I've been thinking," I said, choosing my words carefully. "We haven't really talked about us lately, about how we're feeling, whether we're happy, what we want from the future." Michael's fork paused halfway to his mouth. I could see him calculating, trying to figure out if this was a trap or an opportunity. "What do you mean?" "I mean, we're getting married in 6 months. That's a big step. I want to make sure we're both completely committed, completely happy with this decision." I watched his face carefully as I spoke. The relief that flickered across his features told me everything I needed to know. He thought I was giving him an opening to end things without having to be the bad guy. "Victoria," he said slowly, "are you having second thoughts about the wedding?" "I'm asking if you are." Another pause. Michael set down his fork and reached for his wine glass, buying himself time. "I mean, it's normal to have some nerves before a big commitment like this, right? Nerves are normal. But what if it's more than nerves? What if one of us has changed, grown in different directions?" Michael's relief was visible now. He thought I was going to break up with him, that I was going to save him from having to make the difficult choice. "You know," he said, his voice gaining confidence, "I have been feeling like maybe we've grown apart lately. We want different things. We're at different places in our lives." Different places in our lives. What a beautiful euphemism for, "I'm in love with someone else, but I'm too cowardly to admit it." "I've been feeling that too," I lied smoothly. "Maybe we should take some time to think about what we really want." "You mean like a break?" "I mean like ending our engagement." The words hung in the air between us. Michael's face went through a series of expressions: surprise, relief, guilt, and something that might have been disappointment that his big dramatic confession had been unnecessary. "Are you sure?" he asked, but I could hear the hope in his voice. "I think we both know this isn't working anymore. We're just going through the motions." Michael nodded, trying to look sad while clearly fighting off a smile. "You're right. I mean, I love you, Victoria, but maybe we're better as friends." Friends. I almost laughed. He was already rewriting our history, turning a passionate 4-year relationship into something casual and platonic so he could feel better about moving on to Jessica. "So we're agreed then," I said. "We'll call off the wedding, figure out the logistics of separating our lives." "Yeah," Michael said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. "I'm glad we can be mature about this. I was worried it would be messy and dramatic. Messy and dramatic. Like finding out your fiancé has been having an affair might be. We spent the next 2 hours discussing the practical details of our breakup like it was a business transaction. Michael would move out by the end of the month. We'd split the wedding deposits we could recover and eat the losses on everything else. Charlie would stay with me since I was keeping the apartment. Michael was so relieved to avoid a confrontation about Jessica that he was practically euphoric. He offered to pay more than his fair share of the wedding cancellation costs. He insisted I keep the engagement ring. He even volunteered to tell our families and friends that the decision had been mutual. "I want people to know that we're both okay with this," he said. "That there's no bad blood between us. No bad blood." If only he knew that I was planning to use his betrayal as fuel for the most dramatic career transformation of my life. After Michael went to bed that night, I stayed up until 3 a.m., executing the next phase of my plan. I transferred money from our joint account into my personal savings, leaving enough to cover his half of the next month's rent and utilities. I researched apartments in Seattle and Austin, focusing on cities where I'd submitted job applications. I even booked a consultation with a career coach who specialized in helping professionals make dramatic industry transitions. But the most important thing I did that night was send an email to Rebecca Martinez, the CEO of Nexus Dynamics, a rapidly growing tech company based in Austin. I'd been following her career for years, impressed by how she'd built her company from a small software consultancy into a major player in the business intelligence space. "Dear Ms. Martinez," I wrote, "I'm reaching out because I'm at a pivotal point in my career and looking for an opportunity to make a significant impact in the tech industry. I have 4 years of marketing experience, but more importantly, I have the hunger and determination to exceed expectations in a fast-paced environment. I know this is unconventional, but I'd love the opportunity to discuss how I might contribute to Nexus Dynamics' continued growth." I attached my resume and portfolio, then sent the email before I could second-guess myself. It was bold, maybe even presumptuous, but I was done playing it safe. The response came faster than I expected. Rebecca Martinez replied within 6 hours. "Victoria, I appreciate your direct approach. As it happens, we're looking for someone to lead our marketing efforts as we prepare for our next growth phase. The position would be marketing manager, reporting directly to me, with significant room for advancement for the right person. Are you available for a video call this week?" I stared at the email for a full minute, hardly believing what I was reading. A marketing manager position, reporting to the CEO, at a company that was about to scale significantly. It was exactly the kind of opportunity I'd dreamed about but never thought I was qualified for. I replied immediately, suggesting 3 possible times for our call. Then I spent the rest of the week preparing like my life depended on it. I researched every aspect of Nexus Dynamics' business, studied their competitors, and developed a comprehensive marketing strategy that I could present during our conversation. The video call with Rebecca Martinez was unlike any interview I'd ever experienced. Instead of asking me about my weaknesses or where I saw myself in 5 years, she presented me with real business challenges and asked how I'd solve them. "Our biggest problem right now is customer acquisition," she explained. "We have an amazing product, but we're competing against companies with much larger marketing budgets. How would you approach that challenge?" I walked her through a multi-channel strategy focused on content marketing, strategic partnerships, and customer referral programs. I explained how to maximize impact with limited resources and how to measure ROI on every marketing dollar spent. "Impressive," Rebecca said when I finished. "You've clearly done your homework. But I have to ask, why are you looking to leave Portland? Your current position seems stable." I took a breath, choosing my words carefully. "I'm at a point in my life where I need to make some significant changes. I want to challenge myself professionally and personally. Sometimes you have to be willing to start over to become who you're meant to be." Rebecca smiled. "I understand that feeling completely. When I started Nexus Dynamics, everyone thought I was crazy to leave my corporate job. But sometimes the biggest risk is not taking any risks at all." She offered me the position at the end of our call. The salary was 40% more than I was making in Portland, with equity options and a relocation package. More importantly, she was offering me the chance to build something from the ground up, to prove myself in an environment where my contributions would be visible and valued. "I'll need 2 weeks to wrap up my current obligations," I told her. "Take 3 weeks," Rebecca replied. "I'd rather you start fresh and focused than rushed and stressed." After we hung up, I sat in my apartment looking around at the life I'd built with Michael. In 3 weeks, I'd be living in Austin, Texas, working for a CEO who believed in my potential, building a career that was entirely my own. Michael came home that evening with takeout and news. "So I found an apartment," he announced, seeming pleased with himself. "It's a studio downtown, nothing fancy, but it'll work for now." "That's great," I said. "I have some news, too. I got a job offer in Austin." His face went through a series of expressions. "Austin? Texas Austin?" I'm going to be marketing manager at a tech company called Nexus Dynamics. It's an amazing opportunity. Michael set down the takeout containers slowly. When did you apply? For jobs in Austin? This week. I figured if we're starting over, I might as well really start over. But what about your job here? Your friends? Your life? My life. The life he'd been planning to exit anyway, just not quite this dramatically. My life is changing, Michael. We both agreed on that. I'm just being proactive about creating the life I actually want. He was quiet for a long moment. This feels sudden. Does it? Because to me, it feels like I'm finally waking up. That night, as Michael slept in our bed for one of the last times, I finalized my plans for Austin. I researched neighborhoods, scheduled apartment viewings, and even joined online groups for young professionals in the city. But most importantly, I did something that would prove crucial 8 years later. I looked up Nexus Dynamics' biggest competitors, including a company called Meridian Solutions based in Portland, Oregon. They were smaller than Nexus but growing rapidly, with an impressive client roster and a reputation for innovative marketing campaigns. I made a mental note of their name and filed it away for future reference. After all, you never know when information about your competition might come in handy. 3 weeks later, I loaded my Honda Civic with everything I owned and drove away from Portland without looking back. Michael had moved out the weekend before, and our goodbye had been awkward and brief. He'd hugged me and wished me luck, and I'd almost felt sorry for him. He thought he was getting everything he wanted, but he had no idea what he'd actually lost. As I drove south toward my new life, I thought about Jessica Walsh. I wondered if she knew that Michael was free now, if they were already making plans for their future together. I wondered if she felt guilty about her role in our breakup, or if she'd convinced herself that she was just following her heart. Most of all, I wondered if she had any idea that her actions had just launched the most determined, focused, and ambitious version of Victoria Chen into the world. A version that would spend the next 8 years building something extraordinary, something that would eventually give me the power to repay every kindness and every betrayal exactly as it deserved. But that night, driving through the darkness toward Austin, I was just grateful. Grateful that I'd discovered the truth before making the mistake of marrying Michael. Grateful that his betrayal had forced me out of my comfortable rut. Grateful that Jessica Walsh had unknowingly given me the greatest gift possible, the motivation to become someone better than I'd ever imagined I could be. I had no idea that 8 years later, she'd be sitting in an interview room hoping I'd give her a job. Austin welcomed me with blazing heat and endless possibilities. The city's energy was infectious. Everywhere I looked, there were people building something, creating something, chasing dreams that seemed just within reach. I rented a sleek one-bedroom apartment in the South Congress District, walking distance from food trucks, live music venues, and the kind of networking events that could change your career trajectory over tacos and craft beer. Nexus Dynamics occupied 3 floors of a gleaming office building downtown, and from day one, I knew I'd made the right choice. Rebecca Martinez wasn't just a CEO, she was a force of nature. Petite and sharp-eyed, she commanded every room she entered with a combination of brilliant strategy and genuine warmth that made people want to follow her into battle. "Victoria," she said on my first morning, leading me through the open plan office where developers hunched over multiple monitors and sales teams gestured animatedly into headsets. "I'm going to be brutally honest with you. We're at a make-or-break moment. We have 18 months to prove that we can compete with the big players, or we'll get acquired by someone who'll strip us for parts." Instead of intimidating me, her directness was exhilarating. This wasn't about managing existing campaigns or maintaining steady growth. This was about survival, innovation, and proving that a smaller company could outmaneuver giants through pure strategic brilliance. "What's our biggest obstacle?" I asked, pulling out my notebook. Rebecca smiled approvingly. "Brand recognition." Our product is better than anything our competitors offer, but nobody knows we exist. We're the best-kept secret in business intelligence software, which is exactly the opposite of what we need to be. I spent my first month immersing myself completely in Nexus Dynamics' world. I interviewed every employee, from senior developers to customer service representatives. I studied our client feedback, analyzed our competitors' marketing strategies, and identified every gap in the market that we could potentially exploit. What I discovered was fascinating. Our competitors were all playing the same game: expensive trade show booths, generic thought leadership content, and advertising campaigns that looked like they'd been focus grouped to death. They were selling features and specifications to IT directors who were already overwhelmed with technical details. But our actual users, the analysts and managers who worked with our software daily, weren't IT directors. They were people trying to make sense of complex data, people who needed insights that could help them make better decisions for their teams and companies. They were people like me, who appreciated innovation, but needed to see clear value before making a recommendation to their bosses. I developed a marketing strategy I called the human connection. Instead of competing on technical specifications, we'd focus on the human impact of better business intelligence. Instead of targeting IT departments, we'd speak directly to the people who would actually use our software. The centerpiece of my strategy was a content series called Data Stories, real case studies from our existing clients, told not as dry success metrics but as compelling narratives about how better data had helped real people solve real problems. Rebecca loved the concept but had concerns about execution. "This is exactly the kind of thinking we need," she said during our strategy presentation. "But do we have the resources to produce high-quality content consistently?" "We don't need a huge budget," I explained. "We need authenticity. I'll interview our clients personally, write the stories myself, and we'll use simple but professional video production. The content will be valuable because it's real, not because it's expensive." "What about distribution? Content doesn't matter if nobody sees it." I pulled up my competitor analysis. Look at where our target audience actually spends their time online. They're not reading marketing blogs. They're participating in industry forums, following thought leaders on LinkedIn, and consuming content during their commutes via podcasts. We'll meet them where they are instead of expecting them to come to us. Rebecca nodded slowly. "How long do you need to prove this concept?" "Give me 6 months. If we don't see measurable improvement in brand awareness and lead quality, we'll pivot to a different approach." "You have 4 months," she said with a grin. "I like ambitious timelines." The next 4 months were the most intense and rewarding of my professional life. I worked 12-hour days not because I was forced to, but because I was genuinely excited about what we were building. Every morning brought new challenges, new opportunities to prove that creative strategy could outperform big budgets. I produced 3 data stories videos per month, each one featuring a different client and a different business challenge. Wrote detailed blog posts that broke down complex concepts into actionable insights. I started a weekly podcast called Intelligence Briefing, where I interviewed industry experts about emerging trends in business analytics. But the real breakthrough came when I convinced Rebecca to let me speak at DataCon, the industry's biggest annual conference. The speaking fee was expensive for a company our size, but I'd identified it as the perfect opportunity to demonstrate our thought leadership to exactly the right audience. My presentation was titled, "Why Your Data Strategy Is Failing and How to Fix It." Instead of pitching Nexus Dynamics directly, I focused on common mistakes that companies made when implementing business intelligence systems, using anonymized case studies to illustrate both failures and successes. The response was overwhelming. Within an hour of finishing my presentation, I had over 200 LinkedIn connection requests and dozens of emails from people who wanted to learn more about our approach. Our booth, which Rebecca had initially worried would sit empty, was packed for the entire conference. More importantly, the quality of our leads improved dramatically. Instead of fielding calls from tire kickers who were just exploring options, we were speaking with decision makers who had real budgets and immediate needs. "Victoria," Rebecca said as we flew back to Austin after the conference, "I need to ask you something, and I want a completely honest answer. What do you want from your career? Where do you see yourself in 5 years?" The question caught me off guard. In my previous job, career conversations had been about modest promotions and incremental salary increases. Rebecca was asking about vision, about ambition, about the kind of impact I wanted to make. "I want to build something that matters," I said finally. "I want to prove that smart strategy can compete with unlimited resources. I want to lead a team that changes how people think about marketing." "What if I told you I'm planning to promote you to Director of Marketing, with a team of 5 people reporting to you and equity that could be worth significant money if we hit our growth targets?" I stared at her, hardly believing what I was hearing. Director of Marketing, with a real team and meaningful equity. It was everything I'd dreamed about but hadn't dared to ask for. I'd say that sounds like exactly the challenge I've been preparing for my entire career. Rebecca extended her hand. "Then congratulations, Director Chen. Don't make me regret this." The promotion came with a 35% salary increase, but more importantly, it came with the resources to implement ideas I'd been developing for months. I hired a content creator, a social media specialist, a marketing analyst, and 2 marketing coordinators who could handle the execution while I focused on strategy. Building and leading a team was a completely different challenge from individual contribution. I had to learn how to delegate effectively, provide constructive feedback, and create systems that could scale beyond my personal involvement. I made mistakes, hired one person who wasn't a cultural fit, micromanaged a project that would have been better handled independently, struggled initially with the balance between supporting my team and pushing them to exceed their own expectations. But I learned quickly, and more importantly, I learned from people who were generous with their knowledge. Rebecca became an informal mentor, teaching me about executive presence, strategic thinking, and the kind of leadership that inspired rather than intimidated. I joined a women's leadership group in Austin that met monthly to discuss challenges and share insights. I even hired an executive coach who helped me develop the communication skills I'd need as my responsibilities continued to grow. The results spoke for themselves. Within 8 months of my promotion, Nexus Dynamics had tripled our marketing qualified leads, increased our average deal size by 40%, and achieved brand recognition that competed with companies 5 times our size. We were featured on the cover of Tech Week magazine as one of Austin's companies to watch. Rebecca was invited to speak at major industry conferences. Our employee count grew from 35 to 68 as we expanded our sales, development, and customer success teams. But the moment I knew we'd truly made it came during a client call with Morrison Industries, coincidentally the same company I'd worked with during my previous job, though with different decision-makers. Their new VP of Analytics mentioned that they were considering switching to Nexus Dynamics because they'd heard we were the company that really understands how to connect data with business outcomes. After the call, I sat in my office, my actual office, with a window and a door and my name on a placard, and reflected on how dramatically my life had changed. 2 years earlier, I'd been a junior marketing coordinator whose biggest responsibility was updating the company website. Now I was directing marketing strategy for a rapidly growing tech company, leading a team of talented professionals, and building a reputation in the industry. That evening, I did something I hadn't done in months. I looked up Michael Rodriguez on social media. His life appeared to be exactly as I'd expected. He was still in Portland, still working at the same startup, still posting pictures of weekend hiking trips and craft brewery visits. His relationship status showed he was in a relationship, though he hadn't posted any photos with Jessica Walsh. Either they were keeping things private, or his grand passion hadn't worked out quite as he'd imagined. The strangest part was how little I felt looking at his updates. No anger, no sadness, no lingering attraction. He looked like someone I'd known once, briefly, in a different lifetime. Someone who'd played a small role in an early chapter of my story, but had no relevance to the woman I'd become. I was about to close his profile when I noticed something in his recent posts that made me pause. He'd shared an article about Meridian Solutions, the Portland-based company I'd researched before leaving Oregon. The article announced that Meridian had been acquired by a larger firm and was planning significant expansion. Curious, I clicked through to Meridian's website and browsed. Their team page? That's where I saw her, Jessica Walsh, listed as Senior Marketing Specialist, with a professional headshot and a bio that described her as passionate about creating meaningful connections between brands and customers. Meaningful connections. I almost laughed at the irony. I studied her photo for a long moment. She looked older than I remembered, more professional, but there was something in her expression that seemed tired, maybe even resigned. I wondered if her relationship with Michael had lived up to her expectations. If the grand passion they'd shared while destroying my engagement had evolved into the kind of comfortable routine that Michael had claimed to be escaping. More importantly, I noticed that Jessica's title at Meridian was exactly what mine had been at my old job in Portland. A mid-level position with decent responsibilities but limited growth potential. While I'd spent the past 2 years building something extraordinary, she'd remained essentially where I'd started. I bookmarked Meridian Solutions' website and made a mental note to keep an eye on their activities. Not because I was planning anything specific, but because I'd learned the importance of understanding your competitive landscape. In business, information was power, and you never knew when knowledge about seemingly unrelated companies might become relevant. 3 months later, that information became very relevant indeed. Rebecca called me into her office on a Tuesday morning with news that would change everything. Victoria, I've been having some interesting conversations with investors about our next growth phase. We're considering an acquisition. An acquisition of Nexus? I asked, concerned that we might be getting absorbed by a larger company just as we were hitting our stride. No, Rebecca smiled. An acquisition by us. We're looking at purchasing a smaller company that would complement our existing services and give us a foothold in the Pacific Northwest market. She slid a folder across her desk. I want you to lead the due diligence on their marketing operations, review their strategies, assess their team, and determine whether their approach aligns with our culture and values. I opened the folder and saw the company name on the first page, Meridian Solutions, Portland, Oregon. The universe, it seemed, had a sense of humor after all. Staring at that folder with Meridian Solutions' name on it felt like holding a loaded weapon. For 3 years, I'd built my new life in Austin, deliberately avoiding any connection to my past in Portland. I'd become Victoria Chen, Director of Marketing at Nexus Dynamics, respected industry professional, leader of a growing team. I'd buried the heartbroken woman who'd discovered her fiancé's affair so deep that sometimes I forgot she'd ever existed. But now the universe was handing me something I'd never even dared to dream about. Legitimate business power over the woman who'd helped destroy my previous life. I took a deep breath and opened the folder. The acquisition memo was thorough, outlining Meridian Solutions' financials, market position, and strategic value to Nexus Dynamics. They specialized in marketing automation for mid-sized companies, which complemented our business intelligence software perfectly. The synergies were obvious. Our clients often needed better marketing systems, and their clients could benefit from our analytics capabilities. On paper, it was a smart business decision. Meridian had steady revenue, a decent client base, and technology that would integrate well with our existing platform. The acquisition would give Nexus a physical presence in Portland and access to the Pacific Northwest market we'd been trying to penetrate. But I knew something that wasn't in any memo. I knew exactly how Meridian's marketing team operated, because I'd be conducting a detailed review of their strategies, their personnel, and their leadership structure, including Jessica. Walsh, This looks like solid strategic thinking, I told Rebecca, keeping my voice professionally neutral. When do we start the due diligence process? Next week. I want you to fly to Portland and spend 3 days on site, meeting with their team, reviewing their processes, and assessing cultural fit. You'll be working with their CEO, David Park, and their head of marketing to understand their operations. Their head of marketing. According to the org chart in the folder, that position was currently vacant. Meridian's marketing team reported directly to the CEO, which suggested either recent turnover or a lack of senior marketing leadership. What's the timeline for a decision? Fast. We want to close this deal within 60 days if the numbers work out. I'm counting on your assessment to help us determine whether their marketing approach aligns with our values and standards. That night, I sat in my apartment with a glass of wine and really examined what I was feeling. I'd expected anger, vindication, maybe even excitement at the prospect of having power over Jessica. Instead, I felt something more complex, a mixture of professional curiosity and personal detachment that surprised me. 3 years of building my career, of proving myself in high-stakes situations, of earning respect through competence rather than charm, had changed me fundamentally. I wasn't the same woman who'd hidden in hallways listening to conversations about her own heartbreak. I was someone who made strategic decisions that affected people's careers, someone who had to balance personal feelings with business objectives. The question wasn't whether I could be professional in my assessment of Meridian's marketing team. The question was whether Jessica Walsh had grown into someone who deserved to be part of what we were building at Nexus Dynamics. I spent the weekend preparing for Portland like I was preparing for the most important presentation of my career. I researched every aspect of Meridian's marketing over the past 3 years, analyzed their campaigns, studied their client testimonials, and identified gaps in their strategy that Nexus could potentially fill. What I discovered was fascinating, and frankly, disappointing. Meridian's marketing was competent but uninspired. They used standard industry tactics, email campaigns, basic content marketing, predictable social media, without any of the innovation or strategic thinking that had become second nature to me at Nexus. Their case studies were dry and technical. Their thought leadership content read like it had been written by committee. Their brand messaging was safe and generic, designed not to offend anyone, but unlikely to inspire anyone either. It was exactly the kind of marketing I'd been doing in Portland 3 years ago, before I'd learned what was possible when you combined creativity with data-driven strategy. Monday morning, I flew to Portland with a detailed agenda and a completely professional mindset. Whatever personal history existed between Jessica Walsh and me, this was business. Nexus Dynamics was considering a significant investment, and Rebecca was counting on my expertise to help make the right decision. David Park, Meridian's CEO, met me at their offices in a renovated warehouse in the Pearl District. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe 35, with the kind of nervous energy that suggested he was feeling pressure to make this acquisition work. "Victoria, thank you for coming up here. I know Rebecca speaks very highly of your strategic thinking. We're excited about the possibility of joining forces with Nexus." He led me through Meridian's offices, which were smaller than I'd expected, but efficiently organized. The development team occupied one corner, customer service had a dedicated area with proper sound dampening, and the marketing team worked in an open area near the windows. That's where I saw her. Jessica Walsh looked up from her computer as we approached, and for a split second, I saw recognition flicker across her face. Not the kind of recognition you might feel when meeting a business contact you'd heard about, but the deeper recognition of seeing someone from your past in an unexpected context. She recovered quickly, standing and extending her hand with a professional smile. "You must be Victoria Chen from Nexus Dynamics. I'm Jessica Walsh, Senior Marketing Specialist." Her handshake was firm, her eye contact steady, her voice confident. If she was rattled by seeing me, she hid it well. "Jessica, pleasure to meet you. I'm looking forward to learning about Meridian's marketing approach. David continued the tour, but I found myself studying Jessica peripherally. She looked different from the woman I'd glimpsed in LinkedIn photos. More polished, more professional, but also more guarded. There was something in her expression that reminded me of how I'd felt in my old job. Competent, but constrained. Talented, but underutilized. The morning was spent in meetings with David and the leadership team, reviewing financials and strategic objectives. Meridian was profitable but not growing significantly. They had solid client retention but struggled with new customer acquisition. Their technology was reliable but not innovative. It was a company that had found a comfortable niche and remained there, which was exactly the kind of organization that could benefit from Nexus's growth-oriented culture. After lunch, David turned me over to Jessica for a detailed review of their marketing operations. I thought we could start with our current campaigns, Jessica said, leading me to a conference room where she'd prepared materials. Then review our content strategy, social media approach, and lead generation processes. For the next 2 hours, Jessica walked me through Meridian's marketing with the kind of thoroughness that impressed me despite myself. She knew every metric, understood the reasoning behind every strategic decision, and could articulate both successes and areas for improvement with refreshing honesty. Our biggest challenge is brand differentiation, she explained. We're competing against companies with much larger marketing budgets, so we've focused on reliability and customer service rather than innovation. That's a defensive strategy, I observed. What would you do differently if you had more resources? Jessica paused, studying me carefully. Are you asking as part of the acquisition assessment, or are you asking what I personally would do? Both. She leaned back in her chair, and for the first time since I'd arrived, I saw a glimpse of the passionate woman who'd caught Michael's attention years ago. If I had the resources, I'd completely reimagine how we talk about marketing automation. Everyone in this space focuses on efficiency and time saving, but that's not why businesses really buy these systems. They buy them because they want to build better relationships with their customers. They want to feel like they understand their market. I nodded encouragingly. Go on. I'd develop a content strategy around customer success stories. Not just metrics, but actual narratives about how better marketing helped real businesses grow. I'd create educational content that established us as thought leaders. I'd build partnerships with complementary service providers to expand our reach. It was almost exactly the strategy I'd implemented at Nexus Dynamics 2 years earlier. Why haven't you pursued that approach? Jessica's smile was rueful. Limited budget, limited team, and honestly, limited support from leadership. David's a great CEO, but he's more focused on steady growth than aggressive expansion. What about your team? How do they feel about the potential acquisition? Honestly, most of them are excited. Nexus has a reputation for innovation and for supporting professional development. People want to work for companies that challenge them to grow. And you? How do you feel about it? Jessica was quiet for a long moment. I think it could be exactly what we need. The question is whether we'd be valued as contributors or just absorbed as resources. It was a fair concern, and one that suggested she'd given serious thought to the implications of the acquisition. Jessica, can I ask you something off the record? She nodded. Do you remember me from somewhere else? When David introduced us this morning, I had the feeling we'd met before. I watched her face carefully as she processed the question. She could lie, pretend not to remember, avoid the complications of our shared history. Or she could acknowledge the truth and deal with whatever consequences followed. Yes, she said finally. You were engaged to Michael Rodriguez. We worked together at Data Tech Solutions. That's right. And if I remember correctly, you two became involved while he was still engaged to me. Jessica's face flushed, but she maintained eye contact. Yes, I'm not proud of how that situation developed. Are you still together? No. We broke up about 6 months after you left Portland. I felt a flicker of vindication but pushed it aside. Why did you break up? Jessica laughed, but there was no humor in it. Because I realized that someone who would cheat on his fiancé would eventually cheat on his girlfriend. Michael has a pattern of finding someone new whenever his current relationship becomes challenging. I'm sorry that happened to you. Are you? Really? The question hung in the air between us. Was I sorry that Jessica had experienced the same betrayal she'd helped inflict on me? Was I sorry that her grand passion had turned out to be just another chapter in Michael's pattern of emotional cowardice? I'm sorry because I know how much it hurts, I said finally. And because I know you're a talented professional who deserves better than someone who can't commit honestly to anyone. Jessica's eyes widened slightly. Whatever response she'd expected, it wasn't empathy. Victoria, I owe you an apology. What? I did, what we did, was wrong. I knew Michael was engaged and I pursued the relationship anyway. I told myself we were following our hearts, but the truth is, I was selfish and dishonest. Why are you telling me this now? Because I've had 3 years to think about it. Because I realized that my actions had consequences for someone who didn't deserve to be hurt. And because if we're going to work together, I want you to know that I'm not the same person who made those choices. I studied her face, looking for signs of manipulation or strategic positioning. But what I saw was genuine remorse, and more importantly, genuine growth. Jessica, I appreciate your honesty, but I want to be clear about something. If this acquisition goes through, I'll be evaluating everyone on Meridian's marketing team based on their professional qualifications and potential contributions to Nexus Dynamics. Our personal history won't factor into my assessment. I understand. Good. Now, let's talk about your vision for integrating marketing automation with business intelligence systems. For the next hour, we had the kind of strategic conversation I'd been hoping for. Jessica demonstrated a sophisticated understanding of customer journey mapping, marketing attribution, and the technical challenges of system integration. More importantly, she showed the kind of strategic thinking that suggested she could adapt to Nexus's more aggressive growth culture. When our meeting ended, Jessica walked me to the elevator. Victoria, can I ask you something personal? I nodded. Do you ever think about what would have happened if things had been different? If Michael had been honest with you from the beginning? If I hadn't gotten involved? I considered the question as the elevator arrived. I think about it sometimes. But honestly, Jessica, I'm grateful things happened the way they did. Her eyebrows rose in surprise. If Michael had been honest about his feelings, I probably would have stayed in Portland, accepted the breakup, and continued living a smaller version of my life. His deception forced me to rebuild everything from scratch, and that rebuilding made me stronger than I ever imagined I could be. The elevator doors opened. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be the best thing that could have happened to you, I said, stepping inside. I'll have my assessment report ready for Rebecca by Friday. As the elevator doors closed, I saw Jessica standing in the hallway, a thoughtful expression on her face. She was probably wondering whether her future was about to be decided by someone she'd wronged years ago. She was right to wonder. But what she didn't realize was that the woman making that decision wasn't the heartbroken Victoria Chen who'd left Portland 3 years ago. I was someone who'd learned to separate business from personal feelings, someone who valued competence over comfort, someone who made decisions based on what was best for the company I'd helped build. The question wasn't whether I could be fair to Jessica Walsh. The question was whether Jessica Walsh had earned the right to be part of what we were creating at Nexus Dynamics. I had 2 days to decide the professional fate of the woman who'd changed my personal life forever. And for the first time since seeing that folder on Rebecca's desk, I wasn't sure what my recommendation would be. The flight back to Austin gave me 3 hours to process what had just happened in Portland. As the plane climbed above the clouds, I found myself staring out the window, not seeing the landscape below but replaying every moment of my interactions with Jessica Walsh. I'd gone to Portland expecting to feel triumphant, vindicated, maybe even cruel. Instead, I felt something much more complicated. Jessica had surprised me, not just with her professional competence, but with her genuine remorse and self-awareness. The woman I'd met wasn't the calculating homewrecker I'd imagined for 3 years. She was someone who'd made a terrible mistake, learned from it, and grown into a thoughtful professional. But that didn't change the fundamental question. What was best for Nexus Dynamics? I spent the rest of the flight drafting my assessment report. The financials were solid. Meridian would add $2.8 million in annual revenue with minimal integration costs. Their technology stack was compatible with ours, and their client base complemented our existing market perfectly. The Portland location would give us strategic access to the Pacific Northwest, and their team had the technical skills to support our expansion plans. The only wild card was the marketing department, specifically Jessica Walsh. Her strategies were sound but conservative. Her team respected her leadership but hadn't been challenged to innovate. She had the foundation to excel in Nexus's more aggressive environment, but would she thrive or crumble under the pressure? More importantly, could I manage her fairly? Could I separate my professional judgment from our personal history? I was still wrestling with these questions when my phone rang. Rebecca Martinez. Victoria, how did Portland go? Are we looking at a good fit? The business case is strong, I said carefully. Meridian has solid fundamentals and their technology integrates well with ours. The revenue projections are realistic, and the Pacific Northwest expansion makes strategic sense. I hear a but coming. Rebecca knew me too well. Not a but exactly, more like a complexity I need to discuss with you in person. Personal or professional complexity. Another reason I respected Rebecca, she understood that business decisions sometimes involved personal factors that couldn't be ignored. Both. Can we meet first thing tomorrow morning? 8 a.m., my office. And Victoria? Whatever the complexity is, I trust your judgment. You've earned that trust over the past 3 years. That night, I did something I hadn't done since my early days in Austin. I called my sister Maya in San Francisco. Maya was 2 years older than me, a successful attorney, and the only person who'd known the complete truth about my breakup with Michael. Vic, this is unexpected. How's the empire building going? That's actually why I'm calling. I need some perspective on a situation that's both professional and personal. I explained the entire Portland trip, the acquisition assessment, and my complicated history with Jessica Walsh. Maya listened without interrupting, asking only clarifying questions about the business aspects. So let me make sure I understand, she said when I finished. You're in a position to potentially block the career advancement of the woman who helped your ex-fiancé cheat on you, but she's actually qualified for the role, and the business case is solid. That's the simplified version, yes. Vic, what? Does your gut tell you about her as a professional? I'd been avoiding that question, but Maya's directness forced me to confront it. Honestly, she's talented. Maybe not as innovative as I'd like, but she has strong fundamentals and the potential to grow. In a different environment, with better resources and leadership, she could be excellent. And what does your gut tell you about her as a person? That was harder to answer. I think she's genuinely sorry about what happened. I think she learned from the experience, and I think she's been underutilized at Meridian. So the real question isn't whether she deserves the opportunity. The real question is whether you can work with her. Maya had cut straight to the heart of the matter. I think I can, but I worry about perception. If other people find out about our history, will they question my objectivity? Will they think I'm playing favorites or settling scores? Vic, you've spent 3 years building a reputation for strategic thinking and professional excellence. One decision isn't going to undermine that, especially if you can articulate clear business reasons for your recommendation. She was right, But there was another layer to consider. There's something else. If we acquire Meridian and integrate their marketing team, Jessica would essentially be reporting to me. I'd be responsible for her professional development, her performance reviews, her career trajectory. And that bothers you because I'd have power over someone who hurt me. And I'm not sure I trust myself to use that power fairly. Maya was quiet for a moment. You know what I think, Vic? I think you're overthinking this. The woman who left Portland 3 years ago might have struggled with this decision, but the woman you've become, the director who built a marketing department from scratch, who's earned the respect of her CEO and her industry, that woman can handle complex professional relationships. You really think so? I know so. But there's one more thing to consider. What happens if you recommend against the acquisition? What happens if you let personal history override business judgment? I hadn't fully considered that possibility. If I recommended against acquiring Meridian, I'd be potentially costing Nexus a valuable strategic opportunity. I'd be letting my past dictate our future, which was exactly the kind of thinking I'd fought to overcome. Maya, what would you do? I'd make the decision that's best for my company and my career. Everything else is just noise. The next morning, I walked into Rebecca's office with my completed assessment report and a clear recommendation. Good morning? Victoria, coffee. Please. Rebecca poured 2 cups from her personal espresso machine, a ritual that usually preceded our most important conversations. So, what's the verdict on Meridian Solutions? I opened my folder and slid the summary page across her desk. I recommend we proceed with the acquisition. The strategic fit is excellent, the financial projections are realistic, and their team has the skills to support our expansion goals. Rebecca scanned the summary, nodding approvingly. What about the marketing department? That was your primary concern. Their current approach is conservative but sound. With better resources and strategic direction, they could become a significant asset. I'd recommend integrating their team into our department rather than running parallel operations. And their senior marketing specialist, Jessica Walsh? Your report suggests she has potential but needs development. This was the moment of truth. Jessica has strong technical skills and good client relationships. She understands marketing automation systems better than most people in the industry. With mentorship and exposure to our more aggressive growth strategies, I believe she could become a valuable contributor. Would you be comfortable managing her development personally? Rebecca's question was deceptively casual, but I recognized it as a test. She was giving me the opportunity to reveal any personal complications that might affect my professional judgment. I think I could provide effective leadership for the entire Meridian marketing team, I said carefully. Including Jessica. Rebecca leaned back in her chair, studying me. Victoria, in 3 years of working together, you've never been evasive with me. What aren't you telling me about this situation? I took a breath. Rebecca deserved complete honesty, and I'd learned that trying to hide complications usually made them worse. Jessica Walsh and I have a personal history. About 4 years ago, she was involved in the end of my engagement. It's not something that would affect my professional judgment, but I wanted you to be aware of the complexity. Rebecca's eyebrows rose slightly. What kind of involvement? She had an affair with my fiancé. They ended up together after our breakup, though apparently that relationship didn't last. And you're confident you can work with her objectively? I am. Our Portland meetings were entirely professional, and I believe I can separate personal history from business decisions. Rebecca nodded slowly. Victoria, I appreciate your honesty. This actually explains something that puzzled me about your assessment. What do you mean? Your report is more thorough than usual, more detailed in its analysis of individual team members. I wondered if you were being extra careful about something. She was right. I'd spent twice as long on the Meridian assessment as I normally would, double-checking every conclusion and questioning every assumption. I wanted to make sure my recommendations were completely objective. And they are. This is excellent work, as always. Rebecca closed the folder. I'm approving the acquisition. We'll make an offer to David Park by the end of the week. What's the timeline for integration? Fast. I want their team operational under our structure within 90 days. You'll be responsible for managing the marketing integration, which means Jessica Walsh will be reporting to you. There it was. The universe's final twist. Not only would Jessica be joining Nexus Dynamics, but she'd be working directly under my supervision. I understand. Victoria, I need to ask you one more question, and I want a completely honest answer. Is there any part of this situation that makes you uncomfortable? Any concern that your personal history might create problems for our team? I considered the question seriously. Was I uncomfortable with the prospect of managing Jessica's career? Was I worried about potential conflicts or complications? Surprisingly, the answer was no. The woman I'd met in Portland wasn't my enemy. She was a professional colleague who'd made mistakes in her personal life, but had grown from them. If anything, our shared history might actually be an advantage. I understood her strengths and weaknesses better than I would with a complete stranger. I'm confident I can manage this situation professionally, I told Rebecca. If anything, I think our history might help me provide better leadership. I understand what she's capable of achieving. Rebecca smiled. That's what I was hoping you'd say. Congratulations, Director Chen. You're about to get your first major integration project. 2 weeks later, David Park accepted our offer. Meridian Solutions would become the Portland division of Nexus Dynamics, with their entire team transitioning to our company culture and reporting structure. I flew back to Portland to meet with, the Meridian staff and explain the integration process. The reaction was overwhelmingly positive. Most employees were excited about joining a more innovative company with better growth prospects. Jessica's reaction was more complex. When I met with her privately to discuss her new role, I could see both anticipation and anxiety in her expression. Victoria, I want you to know that I understand the unusual nature of this situation. If you'd prefer to have someone else manage my transition, I'd understand. Jessica, I'm going to be direct with you. Our personal history is irrelevant to your professional future at Nexus Dynamics. You'll be evaluated on the same criteria as everyone else: results, innovation, collaboration, and growth potential. And if I don't meet those criteria, then you'll receive feedback, coaching, and development opportunities like any other team member. If you still don't meet our standards after reasonable support, we'll discuss alternative arrangements. She nodded, looking relieved by my straightforward approach. What should I expect during the transition? I pulled out the integration timeline I'd developed. You'll spend your first month in Austin, working directly with our team to understand our processes and culture. You'll attend our quarterly strategy sessions, participate in client presentations, and contribute to campaign development. After that, you'll return to Portland as our Pacific Northwest marketing manager, responsible for regional client relationships and local market development. Jessica's eyes widened. Marketing manager? That's a promotion. It's a role that matches your experience and our needs. Whether it becomes a successful long-term position depends on your performance. Victoria, why are you giving me this opportunity? After everything that happened, I leaned forward, meeting her eyes directly. Because 3 years ago, you made a personal decision that hurt me deeply, but ultimately led to the best professional opportunity of my life. Now I'm in a position to make a professional decision that could be the best opportunity of your career. The difference is, my decision is based on business merit, not personal feelings. Jessica was quiet for a long moment. I won't let you down. Don't make promises to me, Jessica. Make commitments to yourself and to Nexus Dynamics. That's what will determine your success here. As I left the meeting, I realized something that surprised me. I wasn't just giving Jessica Walsh a chance to advance her career. I was giving myself the chance to prove that I'd truly moved beyond the pain she'd helped cause. I was choosing to be the kind of leader who made decisions based on potential, rather than past grievances. It was a risk for both of us. But it was also an opportunity to demonstrate that sometimes the most powerful form of justice isn't revenge. Sometimes it's rising so far above your circumstances that you can afford to lift others up with you. The real test would come when Jessica started working in Austin. That's when we'd discover whether our complicated history would become a professional asset or a liability. That's when we'd learn if Victoria Chen, director of marketing, was truly as evolved as she believed herself to be. But for the first time since seeing Jessica's name in that folder, I was genuinely curious to find out. 6. Months after the Meridian acquisition, I was watching Jessica Walsh present our Q3 marketing results to the executive team. She stood confidently at the head of our boardroom table, her voice steady and authoritative. Pacific Northwest revenue is up 340% since integration, she announced. We've exceeded client acquisition targets by 60%, and customer satisfaction scores in Portland are the highest company-wide. Rebecca Martinez leaned forward, clearly impressed. Jessica, these numbers are extraordinary. What's driving this success? It's the combination of Nexus's innovative culture with deep local market knowledge. We're offering sophisticated solutions while maintaining the personal relationships Pacific Northwest businesses value. I watched our executive team, all nodding, approvingly, taking notes, asking technical questions. Jessica had earned their respect through results, not politics. After the meeting, Rebecca pulled me aside. Victoria, the Meridian integration has exceeded every expectation. Jessica's performance has been remarkable. She's adapted well to our culture. Adapted? She's thriving. Her team engagement scores are the highest in the company. 3 campaigns have been featured in industry publications. She's mentoring junior staff. Rebecca studied my expression. You saw potential others missed. Your recommendation wasn't just good business. It was inspired leadership. The phone call that would change everything came on a Tuesday morning in November. Victoria, come to my office immediately. We need to discuss something significant. I found Rebecca pacing, excitement barely contained on her face. Sit down. This will sound impossible, but hear me out completely. She took a breath. Marcus, Webb from Infinity Capital called yesterday. They want to invest $50 million for a 40% stake in Nexus Dynamics. Infinity Capital was one of the most prestigious venture capital firms in the country. Their involvement meant funding, credibility, and connections that could accelerate our growth exponentially. That's incredible, I said. What's the structure? They're not just investing money. They want to install a new CEO with experience scaling tech companies. Rebecca leaned forward intensely. Victoria, they want that CEO to be you. I stared at her, certain I'd misheard. What? Marcus Webb has been following your career. The DataCon presentation, industry recognition, the Meridian integration. He's convinced you're exactly the leader who can take Nexus from regional success to national powerhouse. Rebecca, I'm not ready to be CEO. That's what I said when I started Nexus. Readiness isn't about having all the answers. It's about having the right instincts and learning quickly. She showed me terms that seemed impossible. CEO salary, substantial, equity, complete operational authority, and board influence over Nexus's future. Why me? They must have dozens of experienced CEO candidates. Because you've built a culture where people exceed expectations. Look at Jessica. 6 months ago, she was mid-level at a struggling company. Today, she's running our most successful operation and being recruited by competitors. That evening, I sat by Lady Bird Lake, the place where I'd often gone to think during my early Austin days. 4 years ago, I'd been a heartbroken woman fleeing Portland with nothing but ambition. Today, I was being offered the chance to lead a company I'd helped build into a national contender. The irony wasn't lost on me. Michael had chosen Jessica over me because he thought she represented excitement while I represented limitations. Instead, his betrayal had launched me toward achievements he couldn't imagine. I called Rebecca that evening. "I'll do it. I'll accept the CEO position. What convinced you?" "The realization that I've been preparing for this my entire career. Every challenge, setback, and success taught me something I'll need as CEO." The announcement came the following week. The industry response was extraordinary. Publications requested interviews, competitors tried recruiting me, and our client retention actually increased as businesses wanted to work with a rapidly scaling company. But the conversation I was most curious about was with Jessica Walsh. I found her in Portland, working late on a campaign proposal. "Congratulations," she said, looking up from her laptop. "CEO Victoria Chen has a nice ring to it." "Are you surprised?" Jessica considered carefully. "Not surprised. I've watched you work these past 6 months. I've seen how you think strategically, solve problems, inspire people to exceed expectations. You were ready even if you didn't realize it. Jessica, I need you to be completely honest. How do you feel working for someone whose life you helped disrupt 4 years ago?" Jessica was quiet, choosing words carefully. "When I first learned about the acquisition, I was terrified. I thought you might want revenge, that you'd make my professional life difficult. And now? Now I realize your success is the best possible outcome for everyone. You've built something extraordinary and given me the opportunity to be part of it. You've shown me what leadership actually looks like." She continued with surprising vulnerability. "You know what's ironic? The woman Michael left you for wasn't really me. It was his idea of me. Someone exciting and different from routine. But the woman you've become? You're everything he thought he was looking for, and more. You're innovative, confident, successful, and completely in control of your destiny." 6 months later, Nexus had expanded to 12 cities across 4 states. Revenue had doubled. Our team grew to over 200 employees, and acquisition offers valued us at over $300 million. But the moment that made everything worthwhile came during our annual company meeting in Austin. I was presenting our growth strategy when I noticed a familiar face in the back row. Michael Rodriguez, wearing a visitor's badge and looking uncomfortable in an ill-fitting suit. After my presentation, he approached me. "Victoria, could we talk?" "Privately." I led him to a quiet conference room, curious what could have brought him to Austin. "I'm interviewing for a senior developer position," he explained. "I heard Nexus was hiring experienced engineers and I need a change." The irony was staggering. The man who'd chosen another woman over me was seeking employment at the company I'd built after he destroyed our relationship. "I had no idea you were CEO until I saw you on stage," he continued. "Victoria, I owe you an apology. What I did, how I ended things, it was cowardly and cruel. I should have been honest from the beginning. Michael, that was a long time ago. We were different people then. You were always exceptional. I was just too immature to appreciate what I had. I looked at the man who'd once been my universe, who'd planned to marry me, who'd broken my heart so completely I'd fled to another state. He looked older, tired, maybe lost. Someone who'd spent years making decisions based on what he thought he wanted, rather than understanding what he needed. If our CTO recommends you, we'll make an offer. But understand, if you join Nexus, you'll be an employee like anyone else. Our history won't give you advantages or disadvantages." "I understand. And Victoria, congratulations on everything you've built. This company, your success, the person you've become. It's incredible." That evening, I sat in my corner office on the 30th floor, looking out at Austin's city lights and reflecting on the journey that brought me here. 4 years ago, I'd been a woman whose greatest aspiration was a suburban wedding and comfortable life with a man who couldn't commit honestly to anyone. Today, I was CEO of a company employing over 200 people, serving clients across multiple states, valued at hundreds of millions of dollars. The woman who'd helped end my engagement now worked, for me, had become one of my most successful managers, and seemed genuinely grateful for opportunities I'd provided. The man who'd left me for someone else was seeking employment at the company I'd built from the ashes of our relationship. And I felt nothing but professional curiosity about both situations. That's when I realized something profound. True success isn't about getting revenge on people who've wronged you. It's about building something so meaningful that their actions become irrelevant to your happiness. I'd won not by defeating enemies, but by growing beyond caring whether they were enemies at all. The best revenge wasn't revenge at all. It was becoming someone so extraordinary that people who'd underestimated you would spend years trying to catch up to where you'd always been capable of going. That night, I approved both Michael's job offer and Jessica's promotion to vice president of regional operations. Not because I was feeling magnanimous, but because both decisions were best for Nexus Dynamics. After all, great leaders don't make decisions based on personal history. They make decisions based on unlimited potential. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.